What's up everybody, hope y'all doing well. This video was supposed to be Fury Part 2, but I wanted to focus on something a little bit different to the channel and try new things. I'm actually working on the Fury now. It's just taking a little bit longer than I thought. I'm going to try to get the video out before Cyberpunk gets here, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But I'm really excited for that game though. It's probably one of the most highly anticipated games this year, and I'm really hyped to bring it to the channel too. So without further ado, let's get into it. A thing about me that you should know is that I really love Devil May Cry. It's my favorite video game series of all time, and the Resident Evil series being second to that. I think it's pretty cool how far Devil May Cry has come as a series, and people are still loving it today. Recently we received the DMC5 special edition for the PS5 console, and also we'll be getting virtual DLC for the PS4 very soon. Everyone is loving it so far. It's actually funny how every time a Devil May Cry game starting from DMC3 reveals Virgil, it's always a hype moment. Here I was thinking like, wow, are we not getting any more content for DMC5? And you know, here we are. Enough about that though. Today I'm going to be rating every Devil May Cry game on the tier list from D to S rank, just like the rating for Devil May Cry missions. But a friendly disclaimer though, now this tier list is solely based on my opinion. I will also try to be objective as possible so that I give every game its fair spot. And also, I don't think none of these games are bad games either, and recommend that you actually play them all just for your enjoyment and interest. I will also put some spoiler warnings up like this. If you see this, mute and go to the timestamp that I posted. I hope they are in good spots for all who want to play the game yourself. With that being said, let's get started with Devil May Cry 1.
Let's rock, baby.
Devil May Cry 1 was a great kickoff to the Devil May Cry series. As old as this game is, even today, this game is still good, playable, and fun. If you're one of those people that really love Devil May Cry 3 a lot, most of what you experienced in that game was a major upgrade from DMC1 itself. If you have never played this game before, I recommend playing it because it is different, challenging, and fun. The weapons, combat, story, music, and atmosphere was pretty well done. At least for the first game, there are not many weapons in this one, but it is enough to have a good time and pull off different combos and moves, and each weapon actually have its own purpose. And let's talk about that real quick. So you have your regular weapon, which is the Force Edge, and also this is the first weapon you have in the game, and later on as you play through you will get an upgrade. Alistar is another weapon that's exclusive to Dante, and you'll only ever get to use it in this game alone. It's a lightning elemental weapon that carries special abilities with your Devil Trigger, and also it's pretty fast but has low damage. Next up is Ifrit. I think Ifrit is a really cool name for this weapon because not only is it a fire elemental weapon, it refers to a fire demon. And honestly, this weapon is pretty strong, and you're going to be using this once you obtain it. I think you're going to be using this the most when it comes to bosses because it has like really high damage. It's just kind of slow, so you're going to have to get used to that. It has like many different special abilities and tricks that you can use with this. You got fire blast, uppercuts, just kicking the shit out of enemies and just charging attacks. And you also get your own exclusive Devil Trigger as well. And next, the last sword that you do get with Dante is the Sword of Sparta, the upgrade from the Force Edge. And after beating your brother Virgil, or as we should call him in this game, Neo Angelo, all three swords have basically the same combos, but they are just used differently. The Force Edge being the weakest, Alistar just being very fast, but the Sword of Sparta having the most damage and also the most speed. So lastly, we have the Yamato, which is the last broadsword that you get once you beat the game on a certain difficulty. The Yamato is a lightning elemental weapon, kind of like Alistair, and is both fast and also has an exclusive devil trigger as well, which you look like Sparta. And also a fun fact about Yamato is that you'll learn a bunch of different things about Yamato and its significance to the Devil May Cry series as well, about how Sparta used it to seal the entrance to the demon world. So now let's talk about Dante's ranged weapons. They are all pretty useful, and that helps you get the advantage over certain enemies. First one is Ebony and Ivory, which are two very strong magic pistols exclusively made for Dante. They are semi-automatic pistols, so you'll be smashing that button to get the most out of it. Second is your shotgun, which is pretty good for damage and knockback. Third weapon is the grenade launcher, which is a little slow but useful for damage. You get another weapon that is also only used underwater. And lastly, the best of them all is Nightmare Beta. It's like an energy blast made weapon from the boss called Nightmare. And fun fact about that is it is ineffective to use it against that boss. To earn the most out of this weapon, you'll have to use your devil trigger, which will deplete when you use it. Let's talk about the combat and enemies. The combat alone is pretty fun, I'd say. It's not always the same with every enemy because this game has many different variations of enemy types that you face, which in turn requires you to approach combat differently. This game has a targeting lock-on system so you can focus on specific enemies, and when you are now holding the lock-on, it still allows you to focus your hits on the enemy so that they don't whiff. Actually, locking on also allows you to do different variations of attacks as well. You can buy and unlock the skills before the mission starts, and you get some pretty cool ones like the Ifrit ground pound and a skill with Alistair where whenever you jump and use your devil trigger, you get to control lightning while you're flying. As I said before, this game has many different enemy types, and what's so unique about them is that based on the difficulty, you get to experience different attacks they might use, and as you fight and experience each enemy, you gain new information in a compendium of many different enemy types. Not only do they tell you about the enemy story and appearance, they tell you how to fight them and how to avoid specific attacks that might one-hit kill you, and how to get to the enemy's weak point. The enemy's shadow, which is a really great primary example of one of the most difficult enemies to deal with because they are so hard to dodge and kill, and it's not even a boss. Sometimes you might even need to fight like two of them. The story in this game is pretty basic but intriguing. The background for the Devil May Cry entire series prior is that there was a demon named Sparta who wished to save humanity. He wanted to preserve the life of humans and hopes that he can live, so he fought off the demons who wanted to basically destroy and conquer the human world. And he succeeded, sealing off the entrance to the demon world. Also, he fell in love with a human named Eva, whom he had two twin sons with. Then shortly after, he died to unrevealed circumstances, most likely died from fighting off demons or Mundus. Now in this game story, you are a demon hunter for hire and struggling in the business a little. Some lady comes by named Trish that weirdly looks identical to Dante's mother who died in the past. Trish fights you, Dante wrecks her, and she tells Dante there is a great threat. Let's go handle this. Dante is like, oh, bet. I believe you even though I'm totally weirded out that you look like my mother, but I'ma need this revenge from Mundus. So let's go. They go to Malay Island, which is hoarded with demons and all. This is also where Mundus, the great and almighty demon that you are supposed to defeat, is located. Dante ventures to this island to achieve the goal of defeating Mundus once and for all. Now obviously there is a lot more that you will discover in the story, and that being, who the hell is Neo Angelo? Why does Trish look like that? Traveling through this island, you will find these answers and secret rooms that are hidden throughout the game. let's talk about music and atmosphere. This game has some really great music and one of the best music playlists in the DMC series. The battle music and tone really fits the creepy atmosphere of the game. Speaking of creepy, this game was actually meant to be a Resident Evil game, hence why the atmosphere is the way it is in a lot of these missions. It has a lot of horror aspects. I think the level design is really good too and unique for this game. I think that you would admire the design for the characters, enemies, and levels. I remember being a little kid playing this game and thought this was the creepiest shit I ever played, because this game used to horrify me, because these are one of the first games I really played that was on PS2. And overall, this game is some hot fire, and I think it's a game people who are new to the series would enjoy. I think this game deserves a spot on the S tier. It almost made it to A tier solely because the combat can be obnoxious sometimes because of the camera and the final boss being kind of RNG when it comes to the hardest difficulty, which is Dante Must Die, and its attacks on the last boss is very devastating. This game definitely has great replayability as well because you get infinite DT, the Yamato, and the Sparta costume. All of that I think is pretty cool. And I think this is the one Devil May Cry game that I revisit the most. And with that being said, let's move on to Devil May Cry 2. Devil May Cry 2 was the next video game in the title in the series, and it was kind of a rough continuation, going from a cool hack and slash fun combos in DMC 1 to an all gun play, bare bone gameplay in DMC 2. You still had the ability to do combos. They weren't that good, honestly, but fun to pull off from time to time. First thing is that the weapons were just boring, and when you upgrade them, it's solely for damage and nothing else. All the weapons were just broadswords with all the same combos, just different uses, such as the Merciless Sword for range and the Vendetta Sword for heavy damage. What is the use of these swords when you have broken guns in the first place is the biggest questions. I thought the bosses looked surprisingly cool though, but not too interesting to fight. They have this one boss which is made from a giant city building demon thing, which is kind of cool because it comes with the whole cutscene. They make this fight look amazing with the cinematic, but like when you actually fight it, it's not too amazing. But I do appreciate the effort though. But there is one cool boss that's kind of like a Neo Angelo type character from DMC 1 that's in DMC 2. This enemy is named Bolverk, I believe, accompanied by 2 dogs. And the game really missed an opportunity, in my opinion, to go in depth on this character. I believe that he fought Sparta in the past or something. I mention him in comparison because he chases you around and you fight him multiple times, just like you fight Neo Angelo multiple times in DMC 1. So I really thought it was worth the mention to that. The music is actually still good in this game and pretty damn engaging with the bare bone combat system. So I think this game made me more engaged with the combat due to the music. Without guns, the combat is pretty fun though and somewhat challenging. Only somewhat though, because I don't think you really need upgrades to beat this game, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to beat this game without even having any upgrades at all. However, this game offers some new content though. You have new, unique, playable character who is more fun than Dante, to be honest. She has fun air combos like Dante. Her weapons all around are essentially the same, and no new things with the new weapons you get though. Overall, the character Lucia is pretty interesting to say the least. I'd really be interested to see her again in the future because I thought her character was just way more interesting than Dante. It seems like this game should have been more about Lucia than Dante in the first place, because Dante just didn't have the personality like he did in DMC 1. In DMC 1, he didn't do too much with the personality in DMC 1, but you could tell that he definitely has some type of personality, like a joking, and he's just way more interesting in DMC 1, to be honest. So in DMC 2 you do get multiple alternative costumes though, just like in DMC 1. In this game you can play as DMC 1 Dante and Trish, which is actually kind of cool. You can also play a thing called Bloody Palace, where you play multiple levels of fighting waves of different enemies. I don't know how many levels there are, but I think it's pretty fun. Lastly, on the new content is the Devil Trigger works a bit different. Instead of new forms of Devil Trigger, you get the amulets, which adds attributes to it, which you can find throughout the game. And so the story is summed up like this. You take on a job from an old lady and face the big threat with not much going on in between the story. And I flip a coin. Well, Dante flips a coin to make decisions as well, which is weird. Like, what? After defeating the great threat, which is Arius, he's basically the main villain, who is trying to open a portal to basically hell. And within the process, he's causing a lot of chaos and destruction to the world. And yep, that's really it. The rest would basically be spoiling, but I don't know. I'll let y'all discover this game for yourself too, to have your own opinion about it. But overall, now this game, in my opinion, is the worst game in the series, and a lot of it is it's kind of bland. I'm gonna be honest. Dante is just not interested in this game at all. At least the first one had more personality, like I mentioned before. Still, with all I just talked about, the game is not bad, nor is it great. But to be completely objective, it has to go to the D tier. I'm sorry, this game is just a really big miss, and I think everybody in the Devil May Cry community would agree with me on that, as well as this game being the worst in this series. So next we have up Devil May Cry 3. Now, Devil May Cry 3 today is still one of the most well-known and very successful games in the DMC franchise. After DMC 2 major letdown, the developers clapped back hard as hell and pushed this amazing game out to the world. Literally everything was extremely better with this game. The version of this game I will be talking about is the most updated version, which is on the Switch. The differences from the other platforms that has the special edition is the freestyle option, which is only available on the Switch. So, and we'll talk about the freestyle a little bit later. Literally everything in this game is exponentially better. A more expressive and hilarious personality upgrade for Dante, more weapons and extremely versatile combat. Story is way better, a lot of cooler and not bland characters. Level design is great. So I'll start off with the story first. This game takes place before the events of DMC 1 and 2. So essentially this is the first Devil May Cry in the DMC story timeline. So Dante is starting to open his new business for demon hunting. He hasn't came up with a name yet and looks like he is getting business immediately. Some bald evil man named Arkham pulls up and gives Dante an invitation that's not too friendly. He later finds out that his brother is the one that wants to challenge him. His name is Virgil, and Dante fights his way through demons, climbing the tower of Timid Gru, where Virgil is located. As you approach the tower and defeat the first boss, or rather the second boss, you meet a new character named Lady.
Are you going to the party? What's the hurry? Didn't you get an invitation?
It seems all the bad ones must love pulling up motorcycles for real. She gives quite the pleasant greeting with the ill intent to kill Dante solely because he is a demon, because, you know, she is basically a demon hunter. Later on in the story, you find out exactly why she is there and so determined to seek revenge on a certain someone. Once Dante reaches the top of the tower, they fight, he loses and gains his devil trigger only by getting stabbed by the rebellion. From this point, let's refer to it as DT.
You finally have it.
Yes. Now the spell Sparta cast will be broken. I see a devil inside you has awakened as well.
Wait. We should leave. For the moment, we have all that we need.
After that, he ventures again for another battle. Okay, so at this point, it's going to be spoilers all the way through. So, yeah, that timestamp. Okay, so continuing on, Dante reaches Virgil. Lady finds out Arkham supposedly dying and tells her he was possessed and that Virgil is responsible for it, so that she can be there for the ritual. Arkham successfully manipulates her and she moves on to find Virgil and to try to kill him. So fast forward, all three of them are fighting. But before I continue though, there is one more new character I haven't talked about yet, and his name is Jester. Every time you encounter this character, he gives Dante advice on how to continue on the path, and also you fight him as a boss. Then after defeating him one time, it's optional the rest of the way through the game. Okay, so back to the fight. They all start fighting each other, then soon Dante and Virgil both get really weak, and Lady being in shock because Virgil says she is foolish to believe that Arkham was actually possessed. So now she is questioning everything. Next, Jester pulls up and reveals he is Arkham and exposes his plan was successful and that they already lost. And then fast forward after this big huge moment here between all three of them and then Jester turning out to be Arkham, Lady fights Dante, being upset that she is just not capable of the revenge that she wants, because she was having a lot of trouble climbing the Timon group because the tower had grew after the ritual was done. So after the fight, Lady submits and bequeaths on the revenge she wants into Dante's hands alone. Dante makes it to the demon world and fights Arkham, but it's not successful until Virgil pulls up and they kill him together. So Dante power alone wasn't enough. Arkham at this point has the power of Sparta, but more so an uncontrolled version. I guess you can call this beta form of Sparta's power. After that, Virgil and Dante fight to the death for the last time, and Dante successfully wins and escapes the demon world. Basically, the story is summed up real fast, I know, and obviously there is a lot more to the story elements, including the comic that they have for this game as well. So I think that's what a lot of people like, is the story is just way more better and a little bit more in depth than the other ones. So let's move on to combat mechanics. The biggest part of what makes this game good is the combat is more versatile than the other Devil May Cry games. You have more weapons, weapon skills, and the best part of it all is that you have style switching. You have Trickster, which allows you to have more advanced dodges, teleporting, and you get some nice invincibility frames with Trickster as well. Royal Guard is a big flex style because you can perfect guard a lot of enemies. A perfect guard has to be timed correctly to receive 0 damage from enemy attacks. Once you stack up enough damage with perfect guard, you can release a super strong attack that deals a lot of damage. Next is Gunslinger, which is pretty cool to flex some of your gunplay and do more with your guns in general. Swordmaster is one of my favorites because you can get more out of your weapon's abilities. There is a lot of stuff you can do with this style, and each weapon has unique moves to them. Next is Quicksilver, and this style requires DT for usage because you can slow down time for all enemies. Lastly is Doppelganger, and this also requires some DT gauge to use because you can summon a second form of yourself in Devil Trigger form and it attacks with you. You can upgrade each of these styles except for Quicksilver and Doppelganger just by using it. These combat mechanics alone are what makes DMC 3 so fun. Also in this game you have Bloody Palace just like in DMC 2, but better because obviously combat. Another great feature is playing Virgil in this, and he is pretty fun to play. It's just he takes some getting used to, but he is very powerful, especially his summoned swords. He's very different from Dante. Both characters have cool costumes as well and some cool small features. One of them is changing the form of your double trigger, and Virgil can turn into Neo Angelo if you equip his Sparta costume. I say Sparta costume because this is supposedly the fit that their father used to wear. I recommend not using turbo mode for DMC 3 because I feel like it's fast enough, and I'm really used to the Devil May Cry 3 speed already. Overall, this game is amazing in all aspects, and I did go over quite a bit of the story because I like it a lot and it really does it for me. It's more in depth with these characters. It's also got some more creative and great level design. This game is an automatic S rank, no questions asked. So that's DMC 3. Let's move on to Devil May Cry 4. I remember being so excited for this game to release back in January 31st, 2008. I'm like 9 years old at this time. This was a long ass time ago, I know. I had no access to PS3 or Xbox 360 at home, but I was able to play the demo on the 360 at my cousin's house. I sat there and played for so many hours, repeating the same old mission. I believe it was the first mission. Because of how excited I was like having so much fun, honestly, when I was playing that game. But later in that year, I got the PS3 and I immediately hopped on that game and was so ecstatic to DMC4. I just really fell in love with that game, and definitely this game has a special place in my heart. I'll be talking about the special edition, of course, just like I have with DMC3. I'll be jumping around with talking about the combat and story at the same time, as I usually am. So in this game, we are introduced to a new protagonist in the series, and his name is Nero. And the game starts off with him flexing demons left and right with no weapon of his own and one arm. Then after that cutscene, fast forwarding to Dante popping up and just started going crazy and killing what you think is people, but they're actually demons. And it's almost like he was posed as a villain to the Order. I was sitting here thinking like, hold up, bruh, is Dante evil? Nah, no way. I was young back then, so I definitely missed some details from the trailers because obviously he's not. The beginning of the game has to be one of the best openings to Devil May Cry games ever. Nero and Dante fighting was one of the coolest things that happened in this game. Like, I just really love the beginning. Like, the beginning of games can really just set you off in a really good mood for the rest. During the fight between Dante and Nero, Nero exposes his devil arm, which becomes a useful and one of the most fun parts of the game. I have to say that this tutorial was really good. You get to test out most of the mechanics at the beginning of the game. The way they did it was you fight with just your gun, cutscene of him getting a sword, switches to the tutorial of practicing sword play, cutscene of you using your devil arm and practicing using it. Next is just fighting Dante as a boss after all the tutorial stuff is out the way. Really freaking fun, I'd say. Low-key wanted to be Nero that day, not gonna lie, when I was first playing it as a kid. Moving on though, you are set with your sword, the Red Queen, your gun, the Blue Rose, and your Devil Bringer. No DT yet though. It's just like DMC 1 and 3 where you have to play some missions to earn it. The skills of Nero and swordplay are pretty cool, interesting, and different, but it can get a little, basic. Overall, this isn't Dante we're talking about. Dante has way more options in terms of gameplay and mechanics, but however, Nero has some really cool stuff specifically special to him that makes him a very unique character from the rest in this game, such as the Exceed skill with Red Queen, which is hella fun to pull off and use for extra damage, and some cool aggressive animations they use when you use special moves. You can use the skill by charging up the Red Queen or by pressing the charge up button at a specific time during a sword attack animation for a max exceed for good damage. Next is the Devil Bringer moves, which is used to grab enemies and do a really cool special attack animation for different demons. The best buster animations are really the ones during the bosses, and each boss can get grabbed and also countered by Nero's Devil Bringer. That's one of the biggest things that makes playing Nero super fun, is that he can do these cool animations on these bosses and do some really good damage, kind of like Bayonetta a little bit, and he's definitely a different and unique character from the others. You can also get upgrades for your Devil Bringer in the story on specific missions, such as being able to use a skill called the Snatch that helps you bring enemies towards you or you to them, and the shield move that allows you to grab some enemies and use them as shields. You also don't gain any weapons as Nero like Dante. The only weapons that technically count that is new besides the Red Queen, the Blue Rose, and the Devil Bringer is Yamato. The Yamato is Virgil's sword that is used in the game to open up the gate to the demon world, which is the premise of the entire game. Also, the Yamato is used to unlock the power hidden within Nero's Devil Arm to activate Nero's Devil Trigger. His DT is really different because it's like he is still in the form of a human, just with red eyes and a demonic energy formed as a demon behind him whenever he does an attack. From now on, we're going to refer to Nero's Devil Trigger as a stand, but let me fill you in what a stand is real quick. A stand is a reference from the JoJo anime, by the way, where their spiritual energy forms this kind of ghost being unique to their personality. Honestly, I really like this form of Nero's DT because it's just so different and it looks really unique and cool, to be honest. Alright, so let's talk about Dante. Now, to this day, in this game, I don't really like to play Dante that much in this game due to these following reasons that I'll explain in a second. After Nero gets captured by the main villain, you play as Dante, and literally Dante's route for his set of missions is just going backwards from Nero's playthrough. And Dante doesn't get anything unique in terms of bosses except for the giant statue boss. And don't get me wrong though, Dante has his moments as well where he's showing his comedic side with the bosses and cutscenes. It's like really cool to see that, but it's just kind of sad to not see he has nothing really unique for him. But I mean, yeah, he got some pretty cool weapons though. A lot of new mechanics too with his styles. He got a style switching, which everyone wanted from DMC3 Special Edition before the Switch release, of course, that finally brought the style switching to DMC3. He even uses Yamato as well, which is pretty cool. But he's pretty strong though and has the capability to defeat bosses like really quickly. My problem that brings this game down is that I don't feel that Dante had a lot of things that were unique to his character and gameplay. The bosses being a big part of that, because not only does he fight the same bosses, but all the bosses seem like it wasn't really made for him. It was more so made for Nero, because with Nero you can counter these bosses, you can use the buster moves on these bosses. It just seems like all of these bosses were really made for Nero, and Dante definitely has way more combo potential over Nero though. Nero's combos and gameplay can get a little boring after some time, but I think Dante has the upper hand when it comes to combat potential because his gameplay really never gets boring and you can always switch it up. Just wanted more for Dante in this game. Honestly, this game felt like it was for Nero, to be honest, like this whole game. Just like in DMC2, I just felt like Lucia should have just been the main character. Besides that though, the story was okay. Not going to go over it this time because there's a lot to unpack with DMC4 story, because they did go in more in depth as well with this one than in DMC3. Some cool things that I like from this game though is seeing Trish and Lady again working together as well with Dante. These character designs were pretty cool and they are playable in the special edition. Trish is like Dante and pretty strong. Lady is like Nero because they play the same missions. All Lady does really is go crazy with the guns, and they are pretty overpowered because they do a lot of damage. But both characters are pretty fun though. Lastly is Virgil. He is an absolute monster in this game. The things I've seen with his character, especially in turbo mode, is insane. I think they did an amazing job with Nero. Just like in DMC3, he gets his own special cutscenes. I would love to talk more about this game, but I have to wrap this one up by saying that this game is definitely a very good one. I know I gave some negatives, but it does have a lot of positives too. Don't get me wrong, this game is super fun and it has a lot of content in the special edition compared to DMC3. But however, I can't say I like this game more than DMC3. The way the missions were and the areas really was lacking. I didn't talk about the enemies too much, but I have to say that the enemies in DMC4 weren't as interesting as DMC3 enemies though, especially the bosses. I just felt like there were a lot of misses in this game, to be honest. I'd give this an A rank, to be honest, but if we were talking about the regular DMC4 version though, it would have to get an aggressive B, because in the regular DMC4 edition, you don't really get that much content. You only play as Nero and Dante, and that's basically it. There's not too much anything with that game. It's like you're left at a point where there's just not like a lot of content to play. Don't get me wrong, it has a lot of replayability, but it just leaves you with wanting more from this game, if you get what I'm saying. But that's it though for DMC4. Let's move on to the next one. At this point in the DMC release timeline, a Devil May Cry standalone game was released. This game is not being put into the tier list for review because of time and also considering it's a standalone DMC game. So comparing it to the others, which is how good the game is, to be honest. I'll probably do a video on it talking about how the game is honestly not that bad at all as people make it seem. But if I were to put it in the tier list just for an off review, I'd give it at most a B, really, without comparing it to the other games, because then it would be obviously a D rank for sure. So the last game we'll be talking about is Devil May Cry 5. I was really stoked to play this on its initial release, and honestly I think that this game was perfect for fans of the Devil May Cry games and people who have never played a Devil May Cry game before in their life. This game is a definite must grab due to its amazing combat, and the 3D animations is beautiful. The characters and story was all interesting. Capcom really did their thing with this game in making everything look so good and crisp. The special edition of DMC5 is amazing graphically, even though the ray tracing doesn't work that well for some reason. You also get to play Virgil finally, because before you couldn't, and I was kind of sad for a while, not gonna lie. Really happy he is there though, and of course he's an amazing character, and his weapons and skills are really overpowered as well, even more overpowered than DMC4. So first, let's just get into combat. The combat, in my opinion, is really like an advanced version of DMC4. Each character has more content in terms of gameplay and weapons. Nero back in DMC4 didn't have much to his character overall, but they did give him some new content for combat, which is the Devil Breakers, his own double trigger, and extra skills. Devil Breakers are basically like a mechanical arm replacement weapon for Nero. In the beginning of the game, he loses his arm to Virgil by just straight up yanking that shit off of him. Nico, a new character introduced in this game, which is actually the daughter of Agnes in DMC4, helps Nero and gives him the Devil Breaker that she built. Each Devil Breaker that you get in this game has its own unique uses, such as Punchline and Gearbra, which are my favorites to use. Punchline allows you to release the arm like a rocket, and it automatically attacks the enemies until you summon it back, and you can also ride on it. Gearbra is pretty good for dodging. It releases this energy from the arm to dodge fluently in the air or attack with it on the ground. Another thing is that they do break as well. How they break is if being attacked while using the Devil Breaker, it will break and switch to the next one in your loadout. Also, if you charge up the Devil Breaker, you can do a massive attack, and after doing so, it will also break. Hence why it's called the Devil Breaker. I think this mechanic made Nero 10 times more interesting, and he also still has his unique grabs or buster moves, as you should say. For each boss, you can use the Devil Breaker or your regular arm that you grow back at the end of the game. His DT is pretty great as well, because this time he has a whole demon form instead of a demon stand. I still prefer the stand, I'm sorry. I think I just like JoJo too much. But next character to talk about is Dante. Dante is really awesome in this game, and they made it so that he has his own bosses to fight too. Even fighting Nero's bosses with Dante in the Bloody Palace is good, and he has his own set of missions in the game. Dante has a lot of cool weapons in his arsenal, and I'm talking way more than DMC4 Dante. Do you miss the Cerberus nunchucks from DMC3? Yep, they definitely brought it back, and it's amazing and even better. Thought this was cool, and they even made additional upgrades to Lady's rocket launcher, where it's more powerful and fun to use. It was kind of difficult to combo with it in DMC3 using Gunslinger. I think they did an amazing job with Dante, and I loved playing him more in this game this time around. Lastly, the newest character they added that's playable in this game is V. So V is kind of like a combat control character. He has some summon abilities that helps him fight when he really can't do much himself. Actually thought I could attack more on my own with this character, but he's still cool, to be honest. I think this game proved you can make edgy characters look really cool. So he summons the demons, Griffin, and Shadow as his main demons to fight. And lastly, Nightmare, which is his ultimate trump card, which requires DT. If you ever played or seen Chaos Legion, then you could say the combat is pretty similar. I do think the Chaos Legion did it better though, because I can fight on my own really. But nonetheless, V is fun to play with overall. And I like the fact that his demons are references to DMC1's enemies. Also, a major plus is that he gets his own missions too. And actually on some missions you get to decide who you would like to play as. A really cool feature that I'm happy they added was a practice mode to test the combat for each character, and you are able to practice on specific demons. They had this in the Devil May Cry standalone game that I talked about before. It's pretty fun practicing and doing crazy combos on there. I see a lot of cool stuff like this on Twitter and YouTube. And of course I'm going to talk about they added a really cool DT form called Sin Trigger. It's like the stronger form of the DT, and you can use this by filling up the Sin Trigger gauge with your DT gauge and just activating it. This is only available for Dante and Virgil though, exclusively. Thought it was a pretty cool feature that they added this. The story and the way characters interacted with each other were pretty good to me. I low-key didn't want Virgil to be the main villain, but he was, and it was obvious. Even though that was the case, I still think the story was cool, and it seemed like they went a little bit more in depth with it. Seeing Dante, Virgil, Nero all together was like a cool family reunion. But here is the thing though, Dante and Virgil's rivalry is just super petty, to be honest, but it's hilarious, and the game actually acknowledges that too, which makes it even better. We are fighting over who is the strongest while the world is burning, bro. Nero's like, bro, we gotta close up this portal while you two are like fighting over who is stronger and stuff. And Virgil does acknowledge Nero too, at least after the fight maybe. Virgil just wants to fight Dante and gain power. This is just what it is. They even fight in the demon world too. Oh, also as a plus, if you didn't know, or if you want to know, Virgil is also the father of Nero too. So this game is better than DMC4 in a lot of ways, even though I like to revisit the game for its gameplay and nostalgia, because the combat in 4 is pretty good as well. I think Capcom really listened to the problems with DMC4 and just straight up fixed them. I believe DMC5 Special Edition deserves the S tier spot. I like the new characters that was added, and I'm really happy with the content that they put in the special edition, and it makes the game even more phenomenal than it already was previous to the release of the special edition. They even added in Morrison from Devil May Cry anime as well, if you do watch it. So that's all I have for the video. Thank you so much for making it to the end. If you liked it, please leave a like, and if you didn't, please dislike and tell me what you thought. And if you want to see more, please subscribe, and I would really appreciate it if you check out the other videos too. I'll leave a link down below, and yeah, thanks for watching.